Hello everyone and welcome back to the AWS studio here at Mobile World Congress, Barcelona. I'm here with Ishwar and Avishai to talk a little bit about the work and the partnership between AWS and Amdocs, and specifically the impact of generative AI on new, innovative, and transformative solutions for telcos. Let's start with a round of intros, perhaps starting with you, Ishwar.
My name is Ishwar Parulkar. I'm the CTO for the telco vertical at AWS.
And I'm Avishai Sharlin. I'm heading products and technologies for Amdocs.
So last year, we had a chance to hear from Shimi from Amdocs about that recipe for success. 100 customer wins spanning every vertical you could imagine. Maybe starting with you, how has that recipe for success evolved?
So first of all, last year you met the sales part of the, and now you'll meet the technology, so it's more realistic. Actually, it all started, I think, way back 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. When we first traveled to meet you guys in Seattle and started the dialogue about how we transform ourselves to become a cloud-native, microservices-based new solution. Back then it was, in a way, a dream of very few, which turned to be, as you rightfully said, a very big success in the market and with our customers.
I want to dive a little bit deeper, of course, into that technology journey. But first, starting with you, Ishwar, as we think about our enormous network of partners, 100,000 partners that work with us each and every day, how does our strategy align with what Avishai just mentioned, specifically in the context of telco?
Yeah, so as you know, in telco ecosystem, partners are super critical, super important. It's just how the way the ecosystem works. And Amdocs has been the oldest and the first partner we really established a relationship with in terms of going cloud native. To just what Avishai was saying, we started our journey in around 2016-17. That was the first time we started talking about edge, network workloads and things like that. And the first partner we had that really leaned into it heavily was Amdocs with their product portfolio to start looking at what does cloud native mean and start deploying it. And it shows today in the maturity scale of adoption of workloads. You know, the products that Amdocs have the largest footprint and most deployments that we have in terms of cloud native applications in this space.
So maybe over to you, Avishai, from a technology perspective and from a customer deployments journey, what were some of the lessons that you learned in 2023 that are really shaping your vision heading into 2024?
Well, there are many. I'll start, first of all, that I always come after a few years to the meetings with Amdocs only myself, because then I find the other key members moving to AWS. But I think that this partnership proved itself in many facets during the years. The lessons were, first of all, maturity of the customer that needs to transform. The customer that wants to transform is one thing, but the maturity, their capabilities to adopt into cloud-native ecosystem is something that you need to master in parallel to the fact that you are installing the latest and greatest technology at their premise. And this is a journey we need to take together as two companies, the customers into, and make sure that they are ready to embrace the cloud-native nature of how to develop and how to operate the new technologies. I would say this is the first and I would say the most important lesson of them all. And then it goes into modularity of the journey. Not all of them are ready to go all in, and they need to take it by steps, and sometimes it's much smarter to do it gradually than try to swallow everything in one bite. So modularity or a phased approach and the maturity of the organization being able to absorb the new technologies are key lessons, I think, from the history.
And I think we often refer to this muscle as working backwards from customers and moving at the speed that they're looking to really engage. So Ishwar, from your perspective, as we think about 2024, what we're hearing from customers in terms of challenges, not just from a generative AI perspective, but just increasing their cloud maturity as a whole?
Yeah. So in addition to what Avishai said, I mean, we see this mirrored in other verticals as well. It's not just telco specific. In adoption of the cloud, we see this pattern, maturity, being aware of how you can phase the move to the public cloud and not think of trying to go all in once, all at once. So these are important ones. But one other thing that we see is a top-down commitment at an executive level to adopting the cloud. I think that's another compelling thing we've seen, where you have that support of top executive. It's one or two executives or whatever who believe that this is a path that should be explored. So that's another thing we see. Your second question was about 2024, right? So in the telco space, we are seeing the maturity accelerate. I mean, and our presence at MWC is an indicator of that. 3 years ago, there was no AWS in MWC, and now you can see the presence here, right? So definitely the maturity, we are moving up the maturity scale, and from a network workload perspective, the way I like to characterize it is you see OSS, BSS adoption first, then you say IMS packet core, and now people are starting to talk about the RAN. But it's the journey we've taken from these workloads is what is getting us to the next steps of getting into more complex and more performance demanding kind of workloads.
I think that the market is looking now into TCO reduction as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And as a general common thing all over, everybody is looking into it. So I think that maybe it's not a lesson, rather, an input from the market to us as suppliers, as ISVs, as vendors, to fine-tune the overall, solution and to make it more affordable, digestible. People, find themselves in a situation that they want to embrace the cloud, but sometimes find it very hard because of the cost associated with it.
Maybe share a little bit more about our hybrid cloud and edge strategy as a whole, and how that's really shaped our strategy with network cloudification and beyond.
Yeah. So we've been on the edge journey since 2017-18 was when we started looking at it. There was a lot of talk about hybrid cloud. And we took a little time to really understand what we could do differently there. It was not just a matter of putting servers at the edge. It was really bringing the cloud to the edge. So that was a fundamental tenet we stuck on. And it was, interestingly enough, it was telco that led to the evolution of the edge cloud. The first use case was really telco, because we started thinking about it. If we wanted to run telco network workloads, the only way, they can't all sit in a region. Network, the fundamental role is to connect users to the to regions or centers, right? So that is what led to the really birth of the cloud. And we built products like Outposts and local zones and wavelength zones with the fundamental tenet that we wanted to bring cloud to the edge and not just put servers. So essentially we have the same APIs that run across all of these products. You can move workloads, applications between these without having to change them, a single pane of glass. And that's working really well in this evolution of trying to run networks end-to-end on the edge.
I think now it's time to finally make that pivot now into generative AI. And so starting with you, Avishai, tell us a little bit more about the amAIz platform and really some of the customer signals that you heard to really start engaging deeply with AWS around generative AI.
So I would say the first thing is, amAIz is amazing, obviously. It's like you need to say it at least once in this chat. amAIz comes with, in a way, a similar philosophy to our cloud philosophy. We need to support multiple LLMs. We cannot, put all our tokens in one. And again, it goes into the market variety and the fact that customers are either, religious on one LLM or want to use different LLMs for different things. So amAIz supports the Amazon Bedrock technology as long as other technologies in the market. The concept is that we are adding on top of it, and we understand that we are not going to provide an LLM by ourselves and are not going to change the fact that the infrastructure for AI is coming from the web scalers, namely Amazon and the other players in the market. And therefore, we're putting and injecting ourselves into this ecosystem and enhancing it or augmenting it with our telco taxonomy. And by doing that, we believe that, and this is what our customers like to see also, that the end result is much better result. We get into better accuracy, we're getting into faster results. Once you inject the telco understanding, which we bring, with the great technology that you guys bring, we got very, very nice results in the market.
And you mentioned that choice in leading foundation models is so important for how you go about building applications. So from the AWS perspective, Ishwar, as we think about Amazon Bedrock and our entire generative AI set of services as a whole, what are customers telling us that are important to them beyond just that choice of model?
So there's a few things here. Generative AI is going to be a transformational technology that's going to touch pretty much every application in some way or the other. But we've been working on artificial intelligence and machine learning for several years. I mean, it's a core of the company right from recommendation engines on our retail, to robotics in our warehouses, to Alexa, right? So it's in our DNA to be working on this technology. So we have a 3-layered approach to how we are addressing this, with recognizing that we are more of a developer platform. So for us, it's not about building the best LLM. It's about really providing choices, democratizing access to this technology, and giving the tools and hooks needed to build applications. So at the bottommost layer, we have infrastructure, which is obviously our cloud infrastructure, but also in-house silicon, Inferentia and Trainium chips, which are purpose-built for doing training and inference. So that's the bottommost layer. Then we have Bedrock, which is the layer where we provide tools to Bedrock itself is a managed service to choose models, to experiment with models in terms of which ones fit your needs, as well as other hooks to help manage security, data privacy, and some of the agents you need to build applications. So that layer is about a tool set to build applications. And then we have the topmost layer, which is applications themselves. So we are investing in building some GenAI applications ourselves. Code Whisperer is a great example where you can use either natural language prompts or seeds of code to generate new code. We have Q now. There's a few more we'll see evolve there. But these are applications ready to use. So essentially infrastructure to build machine learning technology, a developer environment to build applications, and some applications themselves. So that's how we look at it. And it's all about giving customers the choice wherever they sit in this stack.
I really like the taxonomy and the ways that you sort of laid that out. So maybe Avishai.
Actually, I liked it also.
And as we think about maybe segueing into that customer impact, it's not just about how we seamlessly organize that stack, but the customer outcomes that our partners can experience. So from your perspective, we're embedding generative AI. We're starting to see some of these early outcomes. Where do you expect to see customers taking advantage of those streamlined processes and operational efficiency early on through the likes of amAIz embedded with AWS?
Again, a good question. I think we see it in several aspects. The first one would be obviously going back to our early beginning, TCO reduction. So people want to drive costs down, either operational cost or the cost that it takes a manual person to speak with, with the consumer. So they want to drive it down, and therefore you'll find the first places that will see such use cases being introduced into customer service, or the ones that can reduce the interaction between a human being and a consumer that has an issue. This is the first place. The second place goes into automation and the ability to do things either faster or replace manual labor steps into a more automatic process. And again, here GenAI can assist a lot in producing this kind of slickness and automatic way of performing things in a better way. So I think these are the two areas. And you'll see those and then ranging into the operational floor, into the network domain, and everything to do with how to operate things, manufacture things. And I think you have many examples about how to operate, a manufacturing floor or a warehouse or what have you. And then also into the customer-facing ones, because over there you want to reduce the time and the cost associated with someone picking the phone or someone addressing a problem versus hopefully X% being reduced by an automatic answer.
And I think these use cases clearly illustrate it's a multi-year journey, and we're on that journey with our customers and partners. So Ishwar, from your perspective, in that multi-year journey, how do we expect to help our partners both technically and culturally along that journey?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the cultural question, because we get often caught up in talking about the technology, the use cases, the business imperative. But a fundamental thing that needs to happen here is really a culture change. And there are obviously verticals and companies that are ahead in this journey. But with telcos, it's a fundamental mind shift that needs to happen. You need to build centers of excellence in the company that understand data. So it's not just about infrastructure for data or use cases. It's really understanding how do you manage data, how do you keep the data clean, what is relevant data, what is not, and then build data infrastructure on top of it that can take advantage of that, and then layer machine learning on top. We're looking at quite a few things to really help not only telco customers, but in general, customers on this journey. We have a program to train and certify folks in the AI technology. With telco specifically, we've created programs where we work with their engineering teams to get them up to speed on cloud technologies. So we'll have to do more of that, and we are doing more of that with the AI, in the AI space also specifically. Is really hand-holding customers and embedding some of our experts in there so that they can come up to speed culturally as well as in terms of the expertise required to build these things.
Yeah, I think we can all agree as technologists here, enablement is so important, and that generative AI foundations course that we released as AWS on YouTube, a few hours, really giving you that, first of all, free, easy to access, and technically rich insights on how to get started, I think is so important. So perhaps as we look to the future, starting with you, Avishai, our theme here at AWS this year in 2024 is all about that next level of communications. As you think about the next level of amAIz integrated with the likes of Amazon Bedrock, what might that look like?
So I have two comments before I address your questions. First of all, I was walking the corridors and I saw this new glasses that can, take pictures, and then a new wearable device that you can speak to, and then something else that you can do this and that. So the future looks like we're not going to meet each other. Only, just click on all places on our body and try to communicate. I still like this version much better, but maybe I'm an old-timer. But going back to your original question, I think that actually I had another comment which goes into culture. It needs also to be clear to our listeners or audience, the interface language you're using is not necessarily going to be English. Now, though you speak in English, and we all, think that the center of gravity is the English language, there are many, many issues when it comes to cost associated with using Gen AI in different languages. So I think part of the culture is also understanding that we need to make it affordable to the rest of the world to use Gen AI the same way the English-speaking people can do it in other languages as well. And this goes into the ability to penetrate larger markets and the ability to make it affordable also to people which are not mastering necessarily English. Now, again, after those two comments, I'll go back to you. I see a great and a bright future ahead of us, simply because I think we're complementing each other in so many ways. On one end, I think that the fact that we're working together for so many years is very beneficial because we know each other very good. And it's like, a married couple. We know the good things and the bad things. Luckily for us, we are married in a good way. So it's not about fighting. It's more about how we build a future together. And I think that I'm very optimistic in that we just recently were at your labs, and we spent several days with Ishwar and the team. And I think that these ongoing relations of us injecting our needs and you listening to us and then, building together solutions to the market is the right way to move forward. amAIz, in that sense, I think also pioneers the market because we are the first to introduce this telco taxonomy. We are not trying to replace any existing technology on the other end, rather to use it and then to move faster. I think you are an agile organization. We liked it all throughout the years in the fact that Amazon was always not just listening, but also responding very, very fast. And us being agile, you being nimble, together, I think creates a very, very good way to move forward.
The next level of generative AI.
So in terms of where the next year will be, we foresee a little bit of settling down of the hype. It's a lot about generative AI right now. People have forgotten. It's interesting how AI that was very hot recently is called traditional AI now, just a year ago.
Yeah.
But it's a combination of all of these technologies. I think a little bit of the reality will set in as to where generative AI is really useful, applicable, and where it's not, and where you can use regression and other techniques as well. So a little bit of that level setting is going to happen this year. And then we'll see people moving from this basic customer experience type of use cases, which are very compelling and obviously really right for generative AI, to more into network operations and things like that.
I think we are demonstrating as we speak at your booth the first Gen AI use case for the OSS domain.
Yeah.
And it spans end to end from the run to looking into what needs to be done in the network, a co-pilot experience, along with some additional stuff coming from understanding the network, introducing performance and optimization technologies, spanning new resources, and then again balancing the network all over. So I think that the network operational and the fact that we can also team up in that direction is also very, very important.
And to me, this is the most exciting space for generative AI in telco specifically. A lot of the use cases are generic and with a few variations work across industries. But this is the space where I think as an industry, we are very different and can make a difference with partners like Amdocs.
So if we think broader than generative AI, what else are you thinking about as you really lean into embracing some of these future technologies that customers and partners are asking for?
So I think it's an interesting concept. We see some of our offering going into becoming SaaS ready in the nature of, and I can give you a quick example. Our bill experience technology now went into the Amazon marketplace as a SaaS offering. Now, embed this with Gen AI, which we also demonstrate at your booth and at our booth, actually. And you can see now how SMB or anyone that wants it can launch the bill experience, obviously after taking it from the marketplace, and augment the billing experience that an end customer is getting with a fully automated process. And then Gen AI is being injected there to learn the experience and understand how the looks and feel. And also we can inject into it marketing materials and some upside to the SMB market. So from a very, very, I would say, basic few lines of this is your bill for the next month, you can make it an interaction, an ongoing connection with your consumer. And suddenly you have another way to deliver marketing or sales potential materials. And the entire flow is being done by Gen AI and the Amazon and Amdocs technologies combined.
These are just such fantastic showcases, and I encourage everyone to tune into our AWS for Telecom page to take a look at all of these recorded booth demos. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's been one amazing discussion here today. I want to thank you both for joining us. Thank you for the partnership, Avishai. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.